What's the main topic we're discussing when we speak about the ways of traditional cooperation about investments and technologies that Europe brings in here? We always talk to our practitioners, the practitioners who are well established here in Russia, in Moscow, and in other regions. The first question would be to Paolo Bellini. Are you ready to invest into Russian real estate, into Russian business? Yourself, I mean.
Ma certamente.
Of course. We are very much ready to do that. What property is interesting?
Allora, la società italiana guarda all'Eurasia soprattutto per immobili commerciali.
Italian society is looking at Eurasia mostly regarding trade sites like that to develop Italian entrepreneurship.
Va verso interi palazzi residenziali per metterli a resa, ad investimento per affitto.
And we also look at the building in order to rent for us the apartments, including, because as you probably know, that in Europe and in Italian, money in banks do not give any interest. And then renting out flats, you cannot make lots of money. And in Moscow and St. Petersburg and big cities, renting out flats is much more profitable. And then I have a question. I will address my question to Zakhar Valkov, who represents Radios Group. This is one of the biggest companies that deals with real estate in Russia. What would you recommend to Italian investors who think about investment into Russian property, Russian real estate? The specifics of our company, Radios Group, is a certain segment of our commercial real estate. These are logistics and warehouse. We've been doing investment into this segment for 10 years, and we're developing of the biggest logistic park in Moscow region. Speaking about housing to rent, buildings to rent out apartment. We can see very successful stories, and from the point of view that the attractiveness for speculative housing is about to be lost. But when companies will do that professionally, why not? We all face the situation then when to rent a flat in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, is not easy. Interesting segment. Get back to your segment, the segment of warehouse and commercial real estate. What's the share? What about return on investment? Depends on the product, depends how much you invest into the asset that you develop. Now every segment is in different areas. We see that our segment is depressed because the rate and profitability was in dollars before. What we see now, that's the change of the paradigm during the last 2 years, when the Russian companies with the serious devaluation of ruble face the problem that they cannot rent the space, and we owners and developers, and even having dollar credits, now we have to rent out space in rubles. The investment attractiveness is getting down, but on the other hand, so to say, entrance ticket is also cheap. You can count on the return on investment of 12%. You can buy some warehouse space and rent it out. Before, the profitability was lower. It was less than 10%, but it was in dollars. But what we see that it's not easy to rent out space because the market is saturated. There is no qualitative market. Can you give me an example with a certain location, certain name, and certain figures? It's not my segment. The colleagues shared. Paolo said that it's an interesting segment. The colleagues from Italy look at, since I mostly do with warehouse, I see that our segment is oversaturated and there are interesting projects returning housing. Well, as far as warehouses, as an example, for example, our industrial park, Southern Gates, one of the best logistic parks in Moscow region, with very good success story of foreign companies. This Paul Hartman, John Deere, all those companies that were to be localized in Russia 7 years ago. They came to park, we gave them decision. They are with us, they invest us. But commerce, we can discuss anything. We're in depression. Welcome. When those companies were coming over, were there any problems at the entrance? The most interesting that we're a commercial park. It's not a situation when you come to a special economic zone and the state gives you land for nominal cost and brings you all the infrastructure. We bought land, we took care of the infrastructure, we took care of the classification, and we started to build buildings, speculative buildings. The problems that we faced, that's the same situation, that there is not always the proper level of support in the region, or companies do not go to professional players. For example, John Deere, they had a land in Kaluga, they couldn't implement the project. They said 9 months after we need to start production. Similar thing, this is Paul Hartman. This is German company. They bought site in Guskhrustalny. They are at us. It's difficult to judge about reasons. There are different reasons, but professional providers, consultants at the initial stage. There are colleagues from different segments, from legal, from aspects. Will let you not to make this the mistakes at legalization, but there was timing and support. I would like to give the floor to our next participant. Question concerning the legal support of certain deals with real estate. If we speak with Jean-Francois Marker, he really appreciated a lot the legal atmosphere in Russia. Now the climate for business in Russia from the legal point of view is comparable with other countries. The legal practice is not developed because the time is required. But I think that your legal system is wonderful. It works well with the during some court investigation. You can get to the highest cassation instance during 18 months. In France, it would take 5-7 years. The next question, Artashes. How, from the legal point of view, how, from the legal point of view, investment into property, how much foreign investors are protected? I would like to comment the quotation from Jean-François. If investor had to go to investors to the cassation, then something is wrong. But now we see a serious reform of civil law. Now the Russian lawmakers try to incorporate such things familiar to foreign investors. So this is elements compared to English law. We have a new institution, confirmation of circumstances. It helps investors feel in familiar atmosphere. If they make laws, deals according to the Russian law, they do not know all the details, but at least they see something familiar. Because before the trend was, because most of the investment, because before in most of the cases, excluding some situations where there were still some tricks, most of the investment deals were carried out according to the English Anglo-Saxon law, because it gave more clear-cut mechanisms that protects the interests of the buyers. And now we see something. Now we do not have established judicial practice, but we already see it. Just not that long ago, there was quite a big deal at the warehouse properties taking place, where the unique situation where investor buys a logistic park according to the Russian law. He just buys the building, the land, all the communication, lots of property. But there were reasons why to leave Russian law for Anglo-Saxon law. But some time ago, I can see that such deal wouldn't have taken place, and the investor wouldn't have taken even this opportunity of having this deal under Russian jurisdiction. And again, example with the name of the companies. If speak about examples,
there was a topic of warehouse, and I gave an example of warehouse real estate. Now, build-to-suit format is really popular when investor, probably a retailer, comes to a country and it has to build either a supermarket or a warehouse. Together with colleagues, we managed to work in a joint project with Ashan, where he needed a big logistic complex. As every major company, they have their requirements for the complex, for its functionality, for its location. That's why we implement such a project when a building is developed for a specific client in accordance with his requirements. The formats can be different. We have a big experience with our participation of doing it, of implementation of such project. This can be both purchase after the final stage of development, or it can be a development agreement when the investor buys building lot, or another developer is developing it from building it for the needs of a different investor. There is another successful project when we implemented it for a specific investor. Build-to-suit is a concept which came from abroad. A few years ago, it was not really very popular in Russia, But now, when we have a big competition and we have competition between the developers, there is a desire among developers to suit the needs of investor to the maximum. That's a good opportunity for the market and good opportunity to attract new. That's why developers can adjust the building for the needs of investor. It becomes quite a common practice and works that way. And as for the name, Ashan, for example, then we made a project for. It's quite hard to explain it technically. There's a device. These are devices, mechanical lifters for lorries in order to load the cargo to the truck. That's a Belgian producer who tried to localize its production in Russia and develop a service base and installation base. And for his concept and parameters, a service complex was built. Anyway, these contracts are not unique. Almost everybody is ready to work, and this scheme PNG is working actively. As far as I know, Local Park Development is following the scheme as well, sticking to it. The examples are numerous. As far as I know, every federal retailer who are have active operation in Russian market, they need efficiency in logistics, and the center of efficient logistics is a quality logistic complex meeting all the requirements. So retailers mainly come to developers who build a logistic complex to their needs. I would like to welcome Mr. Schneider, who joined our discussion. Good afternoon. I'm sorry for a delay. Well, Moscow is under reconstruction. I knew it in advance, that's why probably I had to bear it in mind. You are in Russia since 2003. You launched the company in 2003. From that, and from that times, what are the differences in approach to foreign investors to Russia, and what are the possibilities for the Russian market when it's opened? The approach has changed drastically. As far as I remember, I came in Moscow in 2001. It was not my business then. I was working as financial director in an insurance company called Allianz, which bought Rosna this year. And I remember the first words of my boss. First problem is corruption, second problem is corruption, the third problem for Russia is corruption. And today it is different. I'd not say to the Western investors that Russia is absolutely liberated itself from corruption. But when we see, for example, when we can examine like tax bodies, custom bodies, I understand that working officially with them has become an easier manner, an easier mode. That's why problems today are different. The problems are financing. Financing used to be at that time as well. One of big problems is to find quite professional employees. They are few and they cost a lot. The problem for those who launch their production in Russia is to find suppliers, and we can see it perfectly in car market. All major international producers launched their production in Russia. It's hard to find suppliers with good quality, not only for one time supplying, but for a long period of time. These are the problems which exist, and they partially it has become easier, partially new problems occur. Of course, there are new problems which we did not see previously. As far as you know, political climate between Russia and the West has worsened. It's not a one-way track. It's going two sides. That's why I think both sides have to launch initiatives to avoid all these problems. I've prepared a small presentation. I understand that maybe later we'll show it, but now within the framework of discussion, if possible. Okay, I can show a bit later. One of solutions, so to say, proposal, how we can come back to joint cooperation, to working together. It was an idea of 1986 in the European Union. In the year 86, the European Union took a decision on single European market, joint economic market within the framework of the European Union. It has significantly pushed forward trade between all member states of the European Union. I think this idea is relevant now. Such an agreement between the European Union and European Economic Union, and more than what to say, not only Eurasian Economic Union, but with all the Russian-speaking countries, Ukraine, all this, from Vladivostok to Lisbon, all the countries. For example, to have unified standards. Today, commerce is complicated for a number of producers. German producers easily trade with France, with Italy, because there are literally no borders, and with Russia it's quite hard. The trade system has become more transparent due to different standards of technical specification. When we talk about real estate, it's all about certification. If in European Union there is a CE sign, there are labels on every good. If we try to unify it between the unions for promotion of economy, it was a good initiative. And we have to take the initiatives to move our countries forward, both countries. But this initiative has a certain lag, it takes some time. And you returned us to the topic to the idea of sanctions. How sanctions reflected the market? Is investor more welcome in Russia now? Of course, sanctions affect the economic life in a way, and the question is always about the investors, whether it is ready to invest in Russia. But I do not think it's a major problem. And one Swedish diplomat told, he said, вы знаете, санкции живут дольше, чем люди. Sanctions live longer than people.
Это, конечно, не очень хороший прогноз, но мне кажется, что все...
It's not a good forecast, but I think that all businessmen have adopted themselves to that, have adjusted themselves to that.
И, наверное, сейчас уже никто ни на Западе, ни в России уже никто не ожидает, наверное,
And both in the West and in Russia, nobody actually expects that sanctions will be cancelled, and it influences the business between the two countries, and Probably these are mainly financial sanctions, but the measures are very damaging due to high rates. How did the market change? How did investor had to deal with investors entered at the entrance? If is it good for investors for sanctions? Because sanctions stop investors. A few come through. One enters. If he enters, is it easier for him? Because without sanctions, there would be 10 of them. Comparing to what period? Comparing to the period when there were no sanctions, especially due to sanctions, because it used to be more or less together. The price, oil, products, ruble weakened, export for Western countries has become very expensive if we compare it to what used to happen 5 years ago. 5 years ago, more and more foreign businessmen decided to start their branches in Russia because they saw a big market there and came there with good luck. And today, the people consider it in a more detailed way. 5 years ago, there was LTD registration. Also, they thought they would start it and it would go automatically. Big market, 143 million inhabitants buy everything which we import here. Today, they consider it in a different manner. First, they examine the legislation in a very specific manner. Then a company, for example, prepares more market analysis because everybody wants to understand how it works and how it functions. And only then, in a very calm and precise manner, they take the decision. When I compare it to what used to be 10 or 15 years ago, it is much better. The tendency is going up without any doubt. Unfortunately, in the last 3 years, it has become more complicated. The reason is not only in sanctions, that's world international political situation. Is an issue about ruble and ruble dollar and euro rate, and some state bodies treat business in a more severe manner than they used to do it 3 years ago. Now it is working harder officially than 3 years ago. A lot of applications, a lot of requirements than 3 years ago. It does not work quite efficiently. Of course, that's time factor. Temporary drop, and we hope everything will go up in the near future. Comparing to what it used to be 3 years ago is a bit harder than it used to be 10 or 15 years ago. It has become much better. Can you give a sort of example when the last a year or a couple of years you brought some sort of Western European countries here to Russia? I have a lot of these examples. For example, 3 or 2 years ago, we had a boom with fashion companies, such as fashion companies like GmbH, Oganov, and others are our clients. And they started to work in Russia long ago, about 20 years ago. First, they were working via franchising system, but after the financial crisis, life became harder for their franchising partners. They decided to quit to launch their own their own initiatives. They do not regret it, but still develop. That's one of good examples. And the other good example, which is not quite a good one, are the developing companies, construction companies. For example, 5 years ago, we had a lot of business regarding this type of companies, and those who already worked in Russia, and the new ones which wanted to start, it's very silent. It's silent here. And I work with a number of companies who produce the building materials. There are only very few those who start in Russia. In order to do that, you need a new boom in real estate. And World Cup is not sufficient for attracting serious developing companies, those who are ready to invest. What is the format of cooperation? Is there an investor? For working on where there is a project. First there is a project, and there is a dilemma also. What was the first, an egg or a chicken? What is the main thing here in your practice? What I mean 5, 6 or 7 years ago, many Western investors just came here, started their business, and they were sure we were launching a daughter company and were ready to invest a few millions. It's gonna go well. It would gonna go well. Now it is different. First, people want to see the project, and after thorough like Rolls-Royce examination, they take a decision, either positive or not. Can I bring some examples? For example, just let's give the floor right away. There's a mic right behind you. Please give the floor. Please again, take the floor. Good afternoon, Ekaterina Veronenkova, Export Agency Direct. I'd like to tell you about our case invested by the company. It's an LG foreign company. It's a very sharp Korean company. In 2013, it appeared in Russia, and on the market, it's a franchise format. After that, the Korean company decided to sell us the exclusive right of owning the company. Now the company is working both in Russia and Kazakhstan, and CIS market in Belarus, and a little bit in Ukraine. And there are many nuances. In 2013, when we were entering this market, the situation was different. When foreign investors were considering that, and we had a big number of proposals in co-investing, purchasing a brand, and other things. After 2014, all the proposals have closed. Today, the situation is a bit different because Korean investors are Korean company owners. The agreement comes to an end, and the Korean owner wants to close this contract because he does not think that a company is needed in Russia today. So it's a double situation, two-way situation, or two possible ways. And we see it in a different manner. Are you looking for an investor? For today, no. We are not looking for an investor to the full meaning of this word. We'd like to have the one who purchased the full pack of the franchise, because we have developed a different format for Russia. And comparing to Korean developers, we can see a number of other Korean companies with the same question, given the marketing budget and promoting it here. But at the same time, the way shop is the building it this way. That situation is quite a complicated situation. And you have a project, you said. Please be short if possible. What do you suggest to Russian investors as well? I'd like to give a floor, or I'd like to give a few words. I work with Israel State for a number of years. I would like to say that there is an interest of foreign investors to Russia. We had an event in the Crimea. We had a meeting in Crimea. Well, as for my personal projects, I do not put eggs in one basket. What is the project that you can name you should invest in? It's agricultural, it's milk production. What is the number of investments starting from 5 million rubles? What are you going to produce there? Rabbits. Thank you. We'll get back to this question a bit later. I would like to continue the topic of sanctions. I would like to ask a question to Konstantin Schamber. We were discussing with Konstantin. Just go a bit in front of this page. Sanctions from point of view of businessmen. How a businessman considers these sanctions, the Western in particular. Konstantin, how does it consider it?
I represent the interest of German Chinese Chinese Association of Medium-Sized Business. That's why I'll touch upon German and Chinese interests. When we speak about business, it's worthwhile to make a split. If we speak about big business, for example, world brands like Volkswagen, they do not need support of SME. That's why they continue investments, and there is always an issue with suppliers. Suppliers have a question: if I come to this market, whom I'm going to produce these spare parts for? If a big motor car producer comes to this market and brings suppliers with him, they understand that there will be a market. On the other hand, the Russian law understand that most of the spare parts for a motor car should be produced by Russian companies, and here we face problems with the quality. Concerning the sanctions, we face the following situation. When we speak about big companies, there is always economic element, economic component, and in spite of the sanctions, some companies, including German companies, they continue to produce maybe in other volumes, but they buy from Russian producers. Speaking about medium-sized business, by the way, we do not have many members, just 100 members, but these are the companies that are owned by certain persons, sometimes families. This is a family business, either Chinese or German. If they do not have a big customer, there is always a risk. I do not always say, why do we need Russia, why do we need CIS? Let's compare the figures. If we speak about Europe, Germany, it's 80 million. In Russia, this is 250 million. In China, it's 1 billion, and the paying capacity is completely different. We had examples, positive ones and negative ones. When in Central Asia, which is an integral part, Kazakhstan people, they offer to build a factory, and they say, where is the market? Whom are we going to sell? 16 million Kazakh people or Kyrgyz people, who are 8 million people. The market is always an issue. And another thing that we should mention, the session is called Russia-Europe. But now we watch very interesting thing. We forget about Asia, we forget about China in particular. I was in Astana at the forum, and I saw one way, one belt. This is a big project of China. It includes all Eurasia. This is 40 billion of money that has one way, one belt. And China, the Chinese people do not think in 3-5 years, but they think in 10 years. They mean investment for the next 50 years, 100 years. Sanctions do not live that long. And you know what picture we face. And this is one of the example of successful clients who are ready to invest into Russia. We see the following picture: Western, to be particular German companies who have already production in China. They are interested in Russia, not German companies that want to buy something here, but not Chinese companies, because Chinese companies, they're a little bit afraid, but these are German-Chinese joint ventures. They start to show interest in the Russian market. Two examples. First, that is medical example, just supporting equipment for medical centers, and then energy saving construction, sustainable buildings. We know the German quality is valuable, but it's expensive. We know about Chinese goods that are inexpensive, but they are not of very high quality. But we speak about German-Chinese joint venture. We receive two interesting effects. First, it is cheaper than German product, but it's not less quality than German quality. And there are specific examples, specific production sites. This is German-Chinese production sites in the territory of China that now review the option not only of their products, but also opening joint ventures in the territory of the Russian Federation. And in this context, just getting back, One Belt, One Way, it's a very big project. When we speak about it, the presence of Russia and Central Asia is an integral part, and Chinese has lots of ambitions, and they have lots of political desire to promote this project, to finance infrastructural projects that will be in the territory of the Russian Federation. We understand that in the nearest future, they will create logistic hubs along different ways that are created within One Belt, One Way, and then every 200 to 300 kilometers, logistic hubs will be created. Deutsche Bank speaks about it as well. These are big infrastructure projects which will partially financed by Chinese party. Can you give some examples with the names of the projects concerning the hubs? So far, I don't have names like that. I know that this is under design. It's very much in demand to create multimodal logistic hubs. Every 200-300 kilometers, possibility to get to railway, to get to air transport, to get to the sea. If we look at the map of Russia and Europe, will see lots of roads in Europe and 2 or 3 roads in Russia. Concerning the production and concerning companies that want to produce, we know a Swiss Chinese investment company that invested $200 million in Beijing, and now in the context that China starts to cut the rights of foreign investors and producers, Chinese investors started to look to a different side. Chinese is not as attractive from the point of view investment as before. Now they start to look to the West, meaning Kazakhstan and Russia. And now we had negotiations. They were not very successful because there are certain difficulties. But the fact that Western Chinese companies review Russia or the post-Soviet space, the CIS, as an interesting market proves to the fact that more attention should be paid to Asia rather than Europe. But getting back to real estate, how Western companies, even with for Chinese possibilities, what will be the problems in real estate? Because any production is real estate. Any real estate is an application to something. This might be apartment houses, it might be production sites. Real estate property is needed. Whether there were problems, I don't know, but might be. Now we're having negotiations with a company that has German roots, but it is located in Saudi Arabia. The company takes care of the factories on rubbish management, and there is a big potential here in Russia, and they are ready to invest. They know how it should look like, and we know that via different channels we came to certain people who understand what federal programs are available in Russian regions that would help to co-finance to build such a plant on waste management, on rubbish management. Foreign investors don't want to understand how to use this waste, how to use this energy. When at the level of the Russian authorities, regional authorities, there is a program that reads, if a foreign investor comes, builds a plant on waste management, we confirm that we provide for a certain amount of waste and provide for buying certain amount of energy. I understand that coming foreign investors is easier if there is a Russian, some participation of the Russian state. Foreign investors believe in the Russian state. I do not have big experience as my colleagues in the context of investors. Foreign investors who were related to, they are interested in PPP. The state should be involved. And as the Russian reality shows, if the public sector is involved, it's a good guarantee it will be implemented in the full volumes. I would like to give the floor to Dominic. He has his consultancy. During the last several years, he brought in 50 Italian companies. Were there issues with real estate when those Italian companies came? Did they face problems? Good evening. Concerning real estate, it's not my topic, but as far as I know, that all those companies who come to Russia, they resolve the problems with real estate either with the company, with their partner, if this is a joint venture. I mostly deal with Italian companies that look for partners. Concerning the real estate, I established the production of Italian cheese here in Moscow, and it was not easy to get property, to get good property with all those parameters. Either this was too expensive or too far. It took us a year to find almost ideal location. And on the basis of that, I can say that unfortunately Italians are not big investors abroad. You know, Germans, French, Belgium, but there are Italian companies who are open to production. This is Lamina, they produce tiles. That's the only company in the world that produces very big tiles. They have certain technology, but they've been working in Russia about 25 years, and 2 months ago they opened their production. And the investment was about 20 million euros. Another company that sees Russia not only as a sales market, but also as a production market. It's this is Palladio that produces vials for drugs. But according to the official data, import from Italy is increased by 38. These are food. This is food. The import is going on, but the most prospective is localization, production here in Russia. What are the examples concerning the cheeses? and the market is growing. I know that there are lots of people from Italy who are ready to invest in the food processing industry in Chechnya, in Rostov. There are good opportunities concerning salads and apples. It proves to the fact that Russia is a market where you can produce. There are some problems, but I can say that there are problems. There are problems, but they are not bigger than in Europe. But here in Russia, there is a big market that is growing. Russia and the customs union and China. In China, there is a shortage of products. That this is mostly brought abroad. And in Russia, there are lots of prospects, opportunities for producing food products, not only for China, but for Europe again, too. It's a huge potential. Any forecast will be underestimation. Today, what happened on the 7th of August 2014 concerning the sanctions. Sanctions gave big opportunities for producers. Those who read the Vedomosti, there are examples like that. All Russian producers saw the increase of profit. I was impressed by an article about producers of fish tins from Vladivostok, whose turnover is about 1 billion euros. And there were two producers, Russian producers, who came up to the American ambassador thanking him for the sanctions. There is irony, of course. I cannot say that sanctions is a benefit, but those who want, they can take benefit from it. The way I did, export goes on, and it will go on. But production is the future of Russia. One of the problems, this is like a hinder barrier for European investors, Italian investors. Information in Italy is limited. We know only about bad in Russia, but there are lots of good things. Those who come over here, there were lots of delegations to Crimea, to Krasnodar yesterday, and today there is a delegation in Yekaterinburg. It means that there is a big interest to the regions to the joint cooperation, but we Europeans should make a jump and understand that Russia is a market not only for sales but also for production, and the laws available here, they protect. But there are good examples of good joint ventures. I will take a responsibility. I took a responsibility on YouTube. We have a channel in Italian. We tell them about a successful story about investment in Russia, but bureaucracy is a problem. I visit the office in Russian. There is so much bureaucracy. For example, for residents, for me to live here in Russia, promise. For example, you come to the office of International Financial Center. Well, I cannot, but not always. For example, International Financial Center, there is not that much bureaucracy. Well, in the regions, the attitude to investors is very good. Governors are very much interested in investors. Now there are not too many problems in the regions. If you do everything openly, you always have protection. Well, business, There is always risk. If there is no risk, then you're a bureaucrat who wants to get profit without risk. In my opinion, the situation is not that bad. There is evolution. To say that Russia is not as dangerous as in Italy or somewhere, example. Maybe I sound too optimistic. Thank you very much. Indeed, if you have questions from the floor, the next question to Jelena. We're from the same country, originated from the same country. What about FIABCI Baltic? What's their attitude to investment into Russian real estate? I've been attracting investment into Latvia, and it's much more difficult to attract investment to Latvia than to attract investment to Russia. Everybody knows about Russia, very few know about Latvia. Everybody knows where Russia is, at least this, they know the geography. Having 17 years of experience working with foreign investors, I make my conclusion: when an investor comes to another market, he is interested in the issues of not only the state of certain segment of economy where he wants to work, but also issues related to the legal framework, to taxation issues, and what is so important for foreign investors. This is the personnel, the staff. Personnel, local staff who will work in this country. A lot depends on the staff, on the local staff. A lot depends whether the investor attains success in this market or not. And investor sometimes sees such an indicator as the level of education of the population. Very important for foreign investors. And here, from my experience, I can say that there is a difficulty because the West lives in a different system of education, and the expectation from their staff is completely different. This is completely different mentality. What is said at school, these are different paradigms about what an employee should do. When they say that in Russia it's difficult to work, they mean that there are absolutely unpredictable things. And what is to be done, it's sometimes difficult for foreign business people to work in Russia due to the mentality issues, difference in mentality. I would like to ask Ulf Schneider, for example, a Russian and German mentality, are they close or are they far, and how a German investor coming here thinking about any sector of investor, is it easy for him to decide? What about mentality? On the one hand, sometimes they ask me why Germans know so much about Russian bureaucracy. Because we have our bureaucracy in Germany. We are experienced businessmen. We know about bureaucracy. That's why we know about bureaucracy in Russia. There are lots of other examples. German and Russian business, they are an ideal couple, but they fail to find a common language. I'm not sure whether it's a true story or just a Muscovite came to Frankfurt. There he rented a Mercedes S600 and he wanted to visit a company that is a world leader in the motor car spare parts. He thought it would be a big factory because it should be a big city. But this was a small company, small factory, 200 people working there, and it was in a village. He was shocked. It's impossible that such a small factory and it's a world leader. Such companies are called hidden champions. Why are they hidden champions? Because they are champions, because they are world leaders. Why are they hidden? Because nobody knows them. But they work very successfully. And there are examples, especially in the motor car sector. This is a Muscovite. He was shocked that there is such a small factory, and he came to the general director of this factory came, who came there by bicycle, not by Mercedes. There was no deal. Is it an anecdote? But a German businessman told me this story. Quite often we have mentality barrier. Domenico was quite right to say that mass media, not only in Italy but in Germany, sometimes not very objective writing about Russia. The same in Russia, sometimes they do not always write what takes place in Europe. It's very difficult to inform oneself. I'm talking about both sides, both parties. But Germans, they feel special relationship with Russia. This is mystique, this is magic. They think that it's possibly very profitable relationship with Russia, and they know that Russia is somewhere far away. And it's a big problem. When in Berlin, I talk to business people, those who fly from Berlin to Moscow. It takes 2 hours 10 minutes to get to Berlin, from Berlin to Moscow. Sometimes, how long does it take to get to Moscow? They say 8 hours. Mentally, Moscow from Berlin is further than Los Angeles or New York, and we need to work on it. As far as mentality, as bureaucracy, we have joint destiny in a way, but unfortunately there are lots of other issues. We are very far mentally from each other, and we need to work on it. And in essence, this is a work to approximate this mentality. 3 weeks ago, I invited 25 German businessmen here in Moscow. 15 of them were here for the first time. They do not have any idea how it looks like, but most of them, they said, we thought the way German TV shows beautiful landscape in Baikal in Siberia, but that Moscow is such a modern city, like Paris, like London. More interesting was for those who were in Moscow 10 years ago, and now they came back. They said 10 years ago this was completely different city. I can even say 3 years ago it was completely different city. These are the changes. We need to tell about those changes in Berlin, in Paris, in Rome. I will help you in that. Another question. I would like to say how to find a partner in Europe or in Italy, for example. Business partner in Italy. A question concerning the report. I would like to thank very good reports, good presentations. I was got interested in Konstantin Schneider
Ulf
presentation.
Schneider или Konstantin Schamber?
Ulf Schneider, Konstantin Schamber, about German Chinese, Konstantin Schamber, concerning German Chinese Russian cooperation. I was very much impressed. We have experts in the floor. This is Ali Stefi and Igor Fyodorov. Could they say something concerning the Silk Road, something close to the topic?
From the Silk Roads, we will get back to the topic of our investment bridge, Russia-Europe. If really there is a wish to deliver a speech, we will definitely give this chance. And Konstantin said you do not, the Germans work hard. How about having a rest, for example? Make a recreation zone for some health care procedures for resort for Russia. Well, and the question is, how in these conditions, and the conditions of today's sanction policy, and in the conditions of openness, how can you find a partner or investor in business for the Russian project?
Io credo che bisogna partire da un concetto di base.
Я думаю, что надо исходить из такого изначального.
I think that we should base on the basic thing. The European business is shifting gradually towards Eurasia. If there were times when there were Germany, France, or Italy, today there is Russian Federation, China, and Eurasia. So, us Italians, we have to understand that the focus is shifting towards East. And as Europeans, we have to forcefully eliminate every obstacle to cooperate with Russia. To start with sanctions. It's not true that nobody does anything against sanctions. I come from a region where we elaborated a law which is against sanctions, regional law. Also because in Italy, sanctions weight many billions euro for us, because it refers to the food, in particular fresh products, and they do not refer to the cars, strangely, a German one, French or Italian. That's why we want to understand why we are not so united against these sanctions. Germany, France and Italy. Though Italy is continuously losing this trade turnover, and uniting together we can be open and say no to the sanctions. And how my colleague Oganov this morning has a new war. Today we can govern business
l'investimento in Russia,
investment in Russia.
La Russia si è attrezzata e favorisce la produzione.
Bearing in mind that Russia has contributed to production, both services and goods in Russia.
E quindi eccoci presenti con alcune iniziative che stanno
And here we are
facendo
with the
esempio in Italia e in
initiatives there. That's why we're present in this market. And we are the example for Europe and for Italy. The first example, first real estate company from Italy, which was quoted in real estate in Italy, has signed big contract with a Russian company and working in real estate. And this sector today, say with enormous investment, is spreading in the whole territory of Russia. That's a practical example of unification of Italian industry and Russian one. And in order to understand, to attract additional funds from exterior world, which is different from industry and specific production, we have to manage to offer, to make an efficient all the wholesale business for it to be on a certain level. Nevertheless, there is an alternative, which is Crimea. Today, it is a very important moment which we have to reconsider. And the last thing is interest from Italian companies to work in Russia. We're ready to come and work here because the crisis, which is still following our nation, has enlarged our borders, and it became easier for us to come and work here. I agree that there is a number of prejudices we have to fight against. Moscow is closer to Venice than to Potenza region or southern region of Italy. And today the flights are so cheap that's really good link between the two nations, the two countries have become easy. And as we still want to see Russians invest in Italy, in our real estate, and it's also true that there are world companies who are ready to invest in Russia. And what is the order of how to do it? What an author of Italian project has to do seeking for a Russian partner? What does he have to do to attract him in his project? Who to turn to? I think you have to address our association, Italian-Russian association, where the president I am, but it will be quite a joke. The situation is that Russian investor has to turn to those players who have many years of experience and which have the offices references to the government, to the governmental body, and are ready to support and contribute to the Russian investors' work to develop an operative business plan and make him invest in this situation, so to say, with enormous advantages. You mean investments in Italy?
Yes.
I was coming up to it. At the same time, the attractiveness of Russia for an Italian investor is determined by the fact that here the economy functions here in Russia. Russians function. And Russians love Italy, love Italians, and Italian style in general. Feel strong in fashion, in progressive construction. We still are great in providing our initiatives in the segment of services. The most attractive project for us, and why people, employees come here and work here. In close cooperation with the Russian side, we develop a number of initiatives, quality ones, because the market exists. You can buy, sell, and rent real estate. Thank you. And same question, how you can find a business partner, or please I address it to Zakhar Valkov. Did you have any examples or initiatives, or from Moscow, from the regions? In fact, the tools are numerous, and the ways of attracting partners and clients also numerous. In many cases, a live case was that we were searched for and there was a company who was trying to organize its logistics, so that needed a partner, reliable one, represented by us. But in our case, what do we face is a huge activity with regional authorities, in particular Moscow, suburbs, Moscow region. We have big contracts with provincial investors, companies who want to localize, in particular from Italy, who come to us from local territories, from administration, and then the agencies for development, which exist in almost every region. That's why there are cases and there are examples, and we do not lack anything. And with sanctions, Russian producers, only one from that, and that's the first point. The second point, those companies only imported things. Now these companies think about localizing here. What created the demand from small-scale, medium-scale business to find a platform and to locate their production. They're quite numerous in this year. In the end of 2016, 2017, there is a big number of small companies who are ready to invest in around 10, 15, or 20 million euro in locating their production here. Can I give a couple of examples? No, unfortunately, we do not have success stories. There is a success story, but it's just called the Ashan, Foleroy Merlin. There was a building for Leroy Merlin, and we developed and already sold it. The investment of companies who spent around 5 to 7 billion rubles in logistics, not in development itself. But I think there will be success stories because it is quite vivid in this segment, and we actually follow it. And the same question, how we can find a partner in business. in Europe from your practice? It's quite trivial here. I think that should offer a better product than a competitor and somehow interest the investor. Here, a very demonstrative example of that. When regional authorities of some local organizations form a sort of technopark who allow the investor to come to the already ready-made project localized, because practically it's a big problem for potential investors in Russia who are looking for locating this production to find a place for their warehouse or a shop or a store. You, in order to find a good location, you need a connection to the water supply and electricity, and we have a number of examples. One project where our company is operating and now unfortunately it is not developed to the full extent. I cannot tell you the name of the producer, but it is a company which is producing agricultural equipment. It has been looking for a platform for plant construction in Russia. We were checking 3 or 4 platforms every time. Yes, the price is more or less good, location is more or less beneficial, but there is always a question of having the permits to connect to electricity and maintenance, all the tech supplies. And they were trying to avoid technoparks. Yes, you have to pay more for a building lot, or you overpay 10-15% after 3 or 4 attempts to find a cheaper building lot. And understanding that this cheaper one will have huge problems and headaches with connection to communications, this producer will build it in Technopark in Voronezh region. And as for Moscow region, Kaluzhsk region, and St. Petersburg region, there are also platforms for development. There are success stories of Peugeot. It was implemented due to a number of some market tendencies. There are problems with consumption, but the plant is operating and nobody is planning to close it. And there are all perspectives for it to keep working. Due to some political and economic reasons, the income and flow of foreign investors has decreased. You have to understand that those who work in the Russian market for quite long did not go anywhere. Huge money were invested in development of business, and it's much more expensive for them to close the situation, to lose everything, than to live in this aggressive environment they're used to it. First project have always been a painful experience, and they were scared of everything. They expected to see some fraud everywhere, but year after year they learn to work with Russia. They agree with more risky deals. They adapt to Russian mentality and the tendencies of Russian business. Practically, this is the same question to Schneider with a small variation. In order to find an investor from Europe or a business partner from Europe, who do you have to address to? To a person who permanently lives, to one person who permanently lives in Europe, or who localized here already? What is the sequence of steps? Probably it's not the main important question whether it's a person who has never been to Russia, who knows it quite well. First of all, you need data, just numbers. Germans, I mean. And Germans love to see people coming to them. Here I see this mentality. I recently discussed it with a representative of one of the industrial parks, Technopark. It's wonderful here. Come and see us. No, I told him, nobody comes to us. It's a village. It's not really comfortable. If you want to attract investors, go to Germany, to Austria, to Italy, to France, Great Britain, and you will show them all what specifically do you have. We heard that more or less some facts are looking good and quite attractive. I think that the country should work hard on a number of things. When I follow the economic data in Russia today, everybody is saying we have 1% of economic growth. It's 1%. It's more or less close to zero. In China last year it was 7%. In Poland, 3%, 3.5%. That's quite attractive, more attractive, looks attractive at least from the first sight. That is why Russia has to work harder, because the data does not look that well. You need to do better marketing for that. My company, for example, the end of last week and at the end of next week, we are organizing manufacturers forum, and we invite 10 industrial parks to Frankfurt to an exhibition where they demonstrate how they were developing these technoparks, how they were doing it, and the experts say what should else be done there. Germans love good presentations, PowerPoint slide, preferably in German, but it's not mandatory. If it's in English, it's okay as well. But it should not be the Arial 10, which I see. But Arial 26, 28, or a few words, or a few pictures, it's much better than 10 slides with Arial 10. Maybe it just looks like simple examples, but that's what needed. When Germans ask me why your company has been such a success in Russia, what is a key moment? There are no key moments. That's regular work, graduate work, day after day. That's what has to be done to present yourself to the West.
You need to take part in the road show and prepare good presentations for good projects. It's a good beginning, I would say. Not everything depends on a specific business person. The economic growth in the pocket does not exist. One manager cannot change anything. What is to be done to create the economic boom again? I think this is a program of import replacement. Does not help a lot. At the same time, it's not good for buyers. Everything is more expensive. When we look at import and export Russia, comparing with the GDP of Russia, what do you think? If you take import and export in Russia and total, and you will divide it by the gross product, it will make 35%. In the West, it is 70%. We cannot change it today. We cannot change it. We may start changing it today. That's why this work of industrial parks is very important for German investors, because in Germany, in each village, there would be its own industrial park. Everything is there, infrastructure and everything. It needs to be publicized, saying that all that is organized in Russia. Of course, the state should work. Before, I was saying that education is a big problem. In Russia, there are very many students, more than in Germany, much more. It looks nice at the first sight, but in Germany, while there are fewer students, younger people, students, because in Germany, secondary education is very good. Half of younger people, of younger Germans, they have baccalaureate. It calls dual education. It's like a college in Russia, but at the same time, they work at a certain company 2 weeks a day. They work at the company 3 days. They study at the college. Good programs. This is financing for medium-sized problems. If Russia does not resolve this problem, having such economic boom as in China and in Poland will not be achieved, or it will be difficult to achieve it. I can give you 10 points. I cannot give you a remedy. In principle, the road that you gave, it's working, it's very easy, but it does work. And the same question to Konstantin. What is to be done to attract investors or business partners from Europe? What I saw working with different people and generations that matter. Now we work with people who are younger than 35 years. Sometimes they don't know English. There was no need to learn it, but they're very good at making presentations. They're technically and financially very well informed. I cannot draw backs on their side comparing with foreign colleagues. Speaking about all people who are older, sometimes they do not have very good presentation skills. But if we take Chinese experience, if you take an average Chinese businessman, look how he presents. Everything is bad there. It's not that there is, the font is not 10, but the font is 8, and in Chinese. The presentation skills are important, but we pay too much importance to package, but not to the content. And I think this is American approach. A beautiful marketing, and the product might be not of very high quality. Answering your question, I may say that from various little experience that I have, when a private businessman goes to Europe for a roadshow, for a presentation, he might be interesting as a personality to a German investor. But the German investor understands that in Russia the level of centralization is very high, that even with they understand that any moment this businessman can lose his position or his health, and the money is lost. Several months ago, I visited different Russian regions. I was in several of them where Ms. Arlova is the governor. She's the mayor of Vladimir. A lot depends on the personality. If somebody understands what she wants to do for her region, then at the state level she organizes a study trip abroad, and the attitude to her is different because she represents the official authorities in spite of all the political issues between Russia and Europe. Russia or Russian authorities have always been the guarantee that those commitments taken by the Russian Federations were fulfilled. Private persons may discard those commitments, but not the Russian state. And when we say how to look for investors in the West, ideally it would be the combination of administrative resources, representatives of the authorities, not at the level of the governor, jointly with some Russian business people who in this region have also their production companies. And such a trip in the context of each big congress in the West will be much more fruitful rather than 5 entrepreneurs, 5 private business people will go. They might be very interesting as personalities, but the level of trust is lower a priori because this is not they are not official, this is not the authorities. That's why I think that when we faced this waste management factory or the factory that produces smart light, all that in the Russian Federation in the region is in demand, and they are ready to attract investors to give guarantees. But we do not hear much about it in Western countries. Maybe marketing is a problem. In essence, we say that we should be more active in our participation in business missions from different regions of Russia, and marketing is a very important integral part. If there is an opportunity to send a governor with a small group of business people to different cities of Europe, they can guarantee all those projects that are in the law. There is financing, then very few will be there. Same question to Domenico: how to find a business partner, business investor in Italy. After these beautiful presentations, I cannot add much, but I agree. The process of looking for a partner, it's obvious. Of course, presentation, you saw many presentations, standard presentations, font 10 and font 20. Of course, it does influence, but at different events, I saw when the presentation is wonderful and with animation, but we can see that people behind the project, they are not investors or owners, they are just managers. There is no soul in it. The data is very important. Sometimes there is no inspiration. It needs to be explained to everybody that you can work here not worse than elsewhere, even better, because in Italy we know that we live in the crisis. We are used to living under crisis. Russia, everything is good, 10 years, then crisis, then everything is good, then crisis. When people came to me with a project, I realized that they wanted to have money 100%. How can I give 100%? No investor will do that. It's very important to know, you invest or me invest. What they said need to be explained to Europeans, to Americans. And we should explain to Westerners that they shouldn't be afraid. You think that there should be joint investments. The initiator of the project should make an investment and invite foreign investors for part of the investment. I think that co-investors is the best. Somebody should make 51% of the investment. Otherwise, there will be a deadline. It's a complicated mechanism, but when you look for 100% investment, I cannot find 100% investments because there might be more questions. Thank you very much. In addition, now we have a company that is ready to invest 100%. Smart lighting in the city. One condition that the Russian Federation on the region where it takes place will have to pay 2 or 3 years. It's a governmental guarantee, and there is a guarantee that the initiator of the project will show due attention. Jelena, question to you. You see what happens in your country and what happens in Russia. How to attract foreign investor to Russia? I think there was a very good remark concerning participation of the head of the municipalities and other high officials in those business trips to another country. This is number one. But any businessman, any Russian entrepreneur should be very well informed and prepared. A business person should know their competitors. He should speak about the advantages of his or her company or project comparing to his competitors, because foreigners will analyze the market and they will know about the segment, certain segment, and if the initiator of the project does not know about it, looks strange. Another aspect that I know, one need to be prepared from the point of view of crediting. One should understand that any foreign investor will not invest just equity. Some debt is needed to finance the project. This is additional guarantee. If the bank believes into your project, if the bank gives you a good rate for the credit, then for a foreign investor, this is another signal that this project needs to be reviewed. If the project is in the segments where there might be subsidies, tax reliefs, this needs to be mentioned. And again, this is work that needs to be carried out before meeting with the investor. It's very important for foreigners. And my last questions to all the participants of our discussion. Paolo, just small rating of the projects or all the spheres that invest into your association in Russian. 3 spheres where the investments take place. First of all, there's the commercial sector, because we're interested in this size, that development, that develop in an integrated way, speaking both commercial and housing. The second thing, everything concerns hospitals and clinics, building of clinics and hospitals, specialized clinics, owing to that, Italian investors, they are ready to invest. And the third ones, and the third topic, this is acquiring of buildings, entire building, to buy entire buildings in order for Italian real estate funds to invest, and then in future to get their rent from what they rent out. Just to buy a building and rent out flats. Same question to Zakhar, Valkov, small rating from 3 areas that are most interesting in the market. The segments that are stable and interesting and that are in demand. This is production, everything that is related to food processing industry, because the food retail is growing, hypermarkets are being built, they need supply. Second segment, this is farm industry localization at the legislative level. There were laws helping to get localized for producers. And the third segment, strangely enough, nevertheless, these are motor car producers. We still have them. The localization is needed. In spite of crisis event during several years, big brands, they place production. These are the top 3, what we can see among clients that join our park. Thank you very much. Same question. Top 3, I would agree about retail and localization. Another very interesting trend. There are more and more projects where foreign investors bring in their technologies, create joint ventures with Russian producers. where, owing to the processes of optimization worked out abroad, owing to the know-how, they led to ameliorate the economy of Russian project, optimize the Russian production, making it more effective, or any other forms, while making some innovative, to bringing in innovative technologies. One of the projects, that's the construction of windmills, windmills. It's very much common in Europe, but not that much in Russia. This is the electricity generation. These are wind farms. Everything is guaranteed by the state in the partnership with Russian Innovative Fund. It's nice to watch, because besides economy, there is also the development of Russian technologies, of Russian know-how, Russian industry. Thank you very much. The same question to Ulf Schneider. Top three segments for investment. Maybe I don't want to reiterate myself. I think IT business, it's very prospective, but it's a very good sector. This is a very good example, because this is SME. It's IT sector is a good example of good functioning of SME. Pharmaceuticals are very prospective. I'd like to warn that in farm industry there might be the same problem as the motorcar sector. All the local producers die out and Western producers grow. Medical equipment, I do not say that these are top three, but these are top three. Your top three, Konstantin. That in Russia they know how to do, and what in Russia they do not know how to do. I agree with Mr. Schneider that IT is the segment where Russian specialists are very strong. Besides, it's inexpensive, and third, and strong support on the side of strong companies and the state. And third, that in Russia now it's a problem. This is the waste management. Waste management. Although this is a big country and there is lots of waste, it's not managed. It's just gathered. It might be a problem, but it might be a good opportunity for business. And third, we work at the borderline of business and education. Educational structures. In Russia, there are many universities. Not fact that they are all at the level they should be, but in the context of the increasing the qualification, as the experience of Germany and America shows, lots of investments in further education, in training and retraining. It might be a very interesting market. The last? You're not the last. Food processing. Food is very good. Mirator, Prime, they are at such a level that are not afraid of competition, but not only such products. Just go to any store, and how many new producers owing to sanctions there are, how to make upgrade on packaging. It's nice to see, to look at it. And we eat every day, twice a day. I can wear my jacket for several years, but I need bread every day. Pharmaceutical, because unfortunately we get sick. Fortunately, I don't for many years, but it is necessary. But while Russia depends on the pharmaceuticals, Russia depends on import raw material from Germany and America. Americans were buying lots of companies in Russia, and waste management is big business. What we did not start here. Nobody understands that this is big business. Understand that this is environment doesn't work. This is marketing. But if they understand that this is big business, big money, somebody should develop this market. And then all the companies that are about. All the companies that work well, those companies that produce some supportive, because it unites, because there is one sector, and in Russia I follow the startups, and there is much synergy, there is good forum, and there are businessmen that did something, and there is a proof. We can do a lot, you can do a lot is ahead. This is my optimism, this is from the practice. These are the sectors where you can make money and increase the jobs. Thank you. And same question to Jelena, top 3. I agree with the speaker. This is food. That's what is that we need every day. Healthcare, pharmaceuticals, not only pharmaceuticals, but also what is more related to real estate. This is the different clinics, hospitals, and industry that is related with children and leisure. We all understand that people do not save on children. That's why those who do with those projects, they make money. Concerning other spheres of economy, that's the policy of the state. In many ways, it influences, but there is a potential in the development of alternative types of energy, but it's more political issue. Thank you. We have questions from the audience. My name is Zlata Smirnova. I live in Switzerland. I'm Swiss and Russian for many years. I have an idea to answer how to find investors in Europe. I organize invest. I organize cultural events. When you organize big cultural events, you are related with sponsors. You start to get friends with them. Then I do in finances, economy, and everything. I understand when we speak investment in the real estate, pharmaceuticals, waste management, that any investors who look for investors from abroad, those who want to invest. I speak about Switzerland. You can be the sponsors of big cultural events because the publicity. For example, now we're organizing a charity ball with the participation of Khabensky, and this is called the first treasure of Russia. I'm speaking about myself while looking for sponsors. This is Rothschild Bank. It's Philip Morris. I hope they will come. Please bear that in mind. And if I can be useful as an investment bridge, I'm the one for Swiss people. It's very important.
That's all about mentality, knowing people and having clean reputation. It's really important to be that bridge connecting people. That's important to understand. Thank you. That was this person, and then you go. Good afternoon. My name is Andrei Alexeyev. A lot has been said that Russian regions for investment. I heard about the central part of Russia, about the Crimea, about the south. How can you evaluate the regions before Ural Mountains, after that, behind them, and further on? And another question is for logistics. How how attractive from point of view of logistics is attractive? Can you paraphrase your question, not to evaluate before Urals or after Urals, but about what regions are interesting? Tyumen region is interesting for me. Tyumen region is interesting for me because Tyumen region is associated with big territories. Just to concentrate on the time, let's make one more top 3 about those regions which are interesting from the point of view of investment to the foreign investors. Once again, those territories of Russia where foreign investors, Italian investors, are interested to invest. Moscow, St. Petersburg, and the third one, the Crimea. And Switzerland. Again, it's quite trivial as Moscow and Moscow region. You know, I do want to believe that today is the second, third, or fourth. But in the near future, the flow of investment of pre-Urals or after Urals regions, but both sides of Urals. I heard from various retail networks. Sometimes they have some prejudice about some territories of Russia. Now they're concentrated on the Black Sea region and Central Russia. But the next goal is your region, which you were asking about. And I would like to answer the question about warehouse logistics. The situation is quite interesting because previously the main market was Moscow. That was our business. But in fact, because of a big volume of offer in the market, we have really low rates, and attractive warehouse outside Moscow, outside St. Petersburg is more interesting because the profitability is higher. But we face a different problem. There are no products, and I don't know about Tyumen, but in Yekaterinburg you cannot find a warehouse. For example, where big national funds that buy assets in the regions. The same Novosibirsk, the existing warehouses like a profit. And I think that our future in our segment is in the regions. As a developing company, we are going to Ulyanovsk, to Kaluga, to Tula. And we base not only on the idea that it's interesting to develop something, to build something. We derive from the interests of a client. There is certain perspective, the profitability is higher, and if we consider broker reports on purchase and rent of warehouses, the number of these contracts is higher outside Moscow than in it. Previously it was different. It was absolutely the country, and I will not name the regions, but I will speak about the criteria. First one is good infrastructure. The second one is to find the suppliers. And the third criteria is professional employees. For example, I did not speak about tax facilitation. So that's a good marketing step. It can have a certain good effect, but it does not it is not the focal point of where to invest. Of the key matter. First idea, my first idea is Tatarstan, because historically and culturally it's a very interesting region for Russia, and Islamic right is developing very actively, and the leader is very strong, who in recent years has done a lot. They have a lot of international conferences, lots of happening, lots of things happening, lots of events. They have very good economic zone, special economic zone. It is like one of the examples. And the second thing I would like to point, without giving the towns and cities, it's everything in the context of the Silk Route. Very big investments will be done there in the upcoming decade. Just briefly, 3 regions. I can tell only 2. Obviously, it depends on the sectors. If we're speaking about the agriculture, south is more appropriate. If we're speaking about IT, Kazan is the most appropriate thing. And there are industrial also areas like for example, Chelyabinsk, Ekaterinburg. In Chelyabinsk, there is a Russian company производит some valves. They had a big building, big construction there. From Ulyanovsk, there are furniture starting from doors, and they are exporting to Italy for quite a long time. Every region has its own strong part. Agriculture is south. Moscow suburbs is producing something, but not like in the south. And we'll give the floor to Jelena with the same top 3 regions, 2 main regions. I had to admit that I do not know the economy of all regions, unfortunately. But being a foreign investor, I would consider previously the segments I want to operate in, and what happens in a specific region with economy, the balance, and how this, what is this economy of the region is based on. I would examine the question of what are the funding moments for the economy of the region. You asked the question to everyone about top 3, and we heard about 15 regions. So Moscow and Moscow region is also really vast, but there is a very good geography from that point of view. А что такое случилось?
Караул устал.
Уходим?
Нет, нет, конечно.
You have to go to business missions quite often, do some other events, arrange some other events. Thank you. And you have the last question. Please make it briefly, because we were asked to end it. I would like to thank, first of all, Naila for a marvelous discussion, splendid speakers, absolutely flamboyant discussion. I would like to ask my Italian colleagues. Nobody mentioned tourism. Nobody investment, hospitality. There like hotels and things like that, because the pensionary houses, some healthcare centers. Is it interesting? It was a real big failure from my side, but we have taken individually the Italian investment to Russia. Overall, we're in 3 major spheres. Even the profitability of the wholesale complex in Russia is obvious, brings Russian and Italian major companies and French ones to consider with big attention the possibility of development of hotel complexes and everything which is referred to the wholesale complexes, even bear in mind that this is a phenomena which is quite opposite, and these days one of the major hotels of Milan was purchased by Russians. And we will announce this deal in a few days, just because Russians perfectly understand that tourism in Italy is not really good. But it's true that tourism in Russia functions, the business one. It works, it does. On the other hand, it's also a member. She's also a member of the association. Now, hotels developing, and recently I heard that another Lotte hotel was opened in St. Petersburg. Investment, indeed, unusual. I don't take only Russian, Italian, but generally European. That's why I would like to thank all our participants today. And those who are following us, thank you so much, and see you next time with some specific results in Moscow Business Forum of Real Estate. Thank you.